Basically, today, I want to speak on how many here have somewhat size-wise smaller Sunday school sessions. I'm raising my hand because we do. How many here have spaces or that you're sharing with other departments? Okay, so basically going to give you the tools that we use. I don't have the market cornered on it, but that we've used to get where we're at today. One of the mottos I have is, what's a headache for a large church is a migraine for a small church. You put Sunday school together and you put it in a box, and you shake it up and you try to get what you can out of it. Sometimes you end up with just that much. There's not a lot to pull out of it. So today I'm not going to wow you with numbers or anything like that, but I want to give you inspiration on how to make your small Sunday school seem like a big Sunday school. When we started Second Chance in Ukaipa, we started outside, out of it. We were out in the parking lot because we didn't have a place. We had 4 walls, that was a sanctuary, and 4 years. There was no room for Sunday school. The pastor said, I want a Sunday school. I said, I don't have a room. And he said, go out there and preach like John did. Go out and teach outside. So we had some Sunday school outside. Any of you that live in California, you know the summers get hot and you don't know when winter's going to show up, just as we did a few days ago. So winter can show up, rain can come, heat can come, and it's brutal. The second thing we did, we went and we bought tents. We had people, people from the church donated money, went and bought some tents. We set those up. Every Sunday we would set up a tent. We literally had tent setup teams every morning, 8:15 or something like that. They would set up, and I'm not preaching to myself, I'm preaching to the choir probably. But you do what you can. But what happens when you build a church, they're usually not built for children. Churches are not built for kids. Coffee shops, you have fellowship halls. They're not designed around kids. So there's always a space issue for children's programs. The other thing is that smaller churches are notorious for tight budgets. Anybody here? When we started, we didn't have a budget. We had 0 budget. I went to the pastor and I said, I need this, this, and this. I said, where's it coming from? And we raised money for this. He said, no. He said, we don't have a budget for it. Now that right there can kill a Sunday school teacher if you're not set up and ready for it. So what we did is we had about 4 or 5 teachers. We gathered our money together and we went out to the Dollar Trees and the 99-cent stores and we got together what we could. Last year, Brother Uzzle was here and he gave us an idea of asking donations. It was huge. Donations were massive. People would give in abundance if you just asked. So, don't let your budget decide how big your Sunday school is going to be. The first thing you must get in your mindset, if there's anything I leave with you today, is a perspective change. Our Sunday school class was small. We had 14 kids. We had a tent that was bigger than our Sunday school. But after a while, being consistent and having a big Sunday school mindset, that's what I want to leave with you today. Have a big Sunday school mindset, big thinking. Because my Sunday school was 14 kids, I act like it was 1,400 kids. Because someday it will be 1,400 kids. Moving on through our journey at Second Chance, Pastor would come and teach us on Wednesday nights, and one of the things he said is that small thinking has small church. So So if you're a small church, okay, and you have just maybe grassroots Sunday school classrooms and you don't have the resources, that's okay. Do what you can on the largest scale you can, and every time you get the opportunity, build on that scale. So we started out, and if you go to our Instagram page, Second Chance Kid Zone, you'll see the progression. And I'd asked the teachers, I said, we're getting bus kids in. I don't want these kids leaving here saying I had more fun at home, because I know where they live and I've seen where they live, and to me that's not fun. So we decorated this tent, set up the tent, decorated the tent, made it look powerful, made it look awesome. So when these kids came, they were thunderstruck. It was like, wow, we walked into some place we weren't expecting to sit down, talk about Jesus for 2 or 3 minutes, have a boring crap, and then go home. And I wanted these kids to be impacted. So the one rule that I set in my classroom with all my teachers was, we do not have little church. We have big church. I want this is the only church these kids will ever know. Some of these kids never get to spend time in our large church. They never get to experience worship the way we do as adults in our worship services. So we created big Sunday school, or big church is what I call it, in our Sunday school classroom. However you run Sunday school is fine. The way we did it is when the clock started, we had worship. And we sing fun songs, we have fun. We do object lessons, we do games, but our end all goal was to let these kids experience what church is like before they go home. Now, maybe my brother-in-law will talk about it, but we have bus kids that beg us to stay into our church services because they like what they feel. So an hour, hour and a half, however long they're there, they want to stay that extra hour because they like that feeling. And I think that's huge. If you can get this mindset in your Sunday school classroom that says, I'm not here just to entertain them, I'm here to let them to pass on the Holy Ghost to them, that's big mindset Sunday school. Anybody here know Brother Kenneth Badley? He was a Sunday school mentor, pastor, church planner, and one thing he had told us was churches with kids programs grow. What changes is how much you want it to grow. So whenever I thought about this, I began to think, how much growth do I want in my Sunday school classroom? How am I going to get that growth? And the first thing started with the vision. How big do I want this thing? We were outside, folks. We can have as much church and big church as we want to. And down in September, this September or October, roughly, we'll be moving into our new building, which is, I don't know the square foot, your brother-in-law would know better, but it's much bigger than we've ever had. So when I go into this place, my big mindset fits in this place now. Where's my next goal? I've got to go to the next goal and say I want my mindset to expand beyond this facility. If I have to go back outside and set up tents, that's where I'm going. So the secret is big thinking and be creative. Let your kids own their room. We bring in our kids, obviously as for a theme, the teachers ultimately come up with that and we decorate it. But because we share the sanctuary where we're at now, there's church immediately after we get done, so we have to tear down. So they don't get to do this. But coming up, they're going to get to decorate their room. They're going to get to paint certain areas. They're going to get to do what they want. Why? Because it's their room. If they own it, they'll have church anywhere. Trust me. Even the pastor's office. And a real quick short story on that. Our pastor's office used to be our fellowship. That's where our Sunday school used to be. And so when we tore that down, we had nowhere else to go. So we went to the sanctuary. Our pastor saw that our vision was bigger than where we could, what could facilitate us. So there was a willingness to say, hey, we need kids to come into our sanctuary, experience God, and that only came through big thinking, big type of vision. Numbers in a classroom they can be discouraging because you have a big vision, you have a big mindset, you know what you want to do, and there's just not that gratification from numbers. So let me talk about that just for a moment. Numbers are absolutely relative. We had 14 kids, as I spoke, in our first Sunday school, and we had 2 children get the Holy Ghost after Sunday school, but in our main service, because it was just a correlation. They had big Sunday school, they stayed, they had big church. And there was a correlation. They were hungry for the Holy Ghost. Those 2 people, those 2 young children were worth more than having 200 kids there and not one being the Holy Ghost. 14 kids and 2 got the Holy Ghost. We've doubled that. But my mindset isn't that those 27 kids or 28 kids is good enough. I'm not just looking for the next 46 children to show up. I want to see growth within the kids. That's where your vision has to be. If you have 14 children and you're not implementing big church into their hearts and what church is, then you need to redesign how you're having Sunday school. The other thing is be careful how you address low attendance. We used to take attendance, and we still do in Sunday school, but we used to really I used to harp on this, and God began to deal with me about this. I began to harp on, where's Miguel, and where's Michaela, and I began to think about this. Like, I am putting a wrong message to these children that my big mindset of kids growing and wanting to be here is actually showing them that they're more important than not being here by worrying that they're not here. And you kind of say, well, you can go both ways. But what I found is when I celebrate the kids that are there, they want to come back. And that facilitates my big vision perspective. So just be careful when you're taking attendance in a smaller classroom setting. It's easier. Anybody went to a small church, when you first got in church or you attended, it's easier. You can't hide in that kind of environment. So when you pinpoint those children, if someone else knows them and they see them, obviously you want to tell them, hey, you were missed, follow up with them, really let them know you want to be there, but let that be a one-on-one thing. Don't let the congregation or the crowd know that, you're really bothered they're not there. So the bottom line for this part is don't count kids. Count, or make them count. Make the kids count. If I have 2 kids, we're going to have big Sunday school just like we do when we have our 28 or 40 or whatever we have on that given Sunday. Now the small church dilemma is that there's way more jobs than there are people. People wear so many hats in small churches, and you have to, in order to thrive, in order to build on your vision, you have to wear many hats. We've taught 4th graders, swept sanctuaries, mailed newsletters, greeted, ushered, played the keyboard, sang, preached. It's home mission style, but you have to in order to facilitate your big vision. Even our sound man is one of our bus ministers. So anybody can do this. So the next question is, how do I get teachers? Anybody and everybody that's filled with the Holy Ghost, baptized in Jesus' name, is a Sunday school teacher. Teenagers, parents, sound men, anybody, ushers. This is where my vision came from. Is Pastor Sonia pastors a massive church. And he's one of the greatest outreach people I've ever seen, at least in my day. And this struck me. If I want to have a big Sunday school, I can't say my position is just Sunday school teacher. I don't know enough. That's not going to facilitate my big vision. So big vision comes from being able to multitask and wear various hats throughout Sunday or Saturday, whatever it might be. Preparing these teachers for children's ministry. In a small church setting, it is very important that we get people prepped for Sunday school ministry. Some people say, well, I'm not talented with kids. I don't even like kids. I can't deal with kids. I just can't stand them. I don't know. I'm not funny. Maybe I'm not, I'm not active. I'm not. So what? I will work with anybody that wants to be a Sunday school teacher. We have, I think, four or five that are in our team. And I think only basically 2 or 3 of us teach. I teach every Sunday, but there's 1 or 2 of that teach. But others work on our buses. They help with the children in the crowd. They help keep kids together. They keep attendance. There are many jobs, trust me, that you can do. So you want to give them job descriptions. Make someone feel valuable. In a big church setting, you got to have this. So why not start when you're small? Why not say, brother, you're going to greet every kid that comes on in this place. You're going to take attendance as they show up. You're going to run the music today, and you're doing my object lesson. I can prepare for the lesson, and we're going to do this thing together. Work in tandem so that we're all on the same page, and everybody feels important. Really quick, there was a young man in our Sunday school classroom who just turned 14, and our classroom has a vast, wide range of kids, coming from 2 to 14. They're all in one class right now. And it's hard to break that lesson across all of their learning sets. From the 2-year-old to 14-year-old to 4. So this 14-year-old, I'm bored in Sunday school, and my mind is, I don't want to lose this kid in my Sunday school classroom, because that defeats my big mindset of Sunday school. How do I get this kid involved? I begin to bring him up and involve him in the lesson. I begin to put him in with the bus. I begin to put him in with mingling with the crowd, doing various things. The kid feels important now. He feels like I'm more than just 14. I'm actually part of this Sunday school classroom. This is my classroom. And you've got to get these kids feeling like that if you're in a small classroom setting. The list of responsibilities is endless, but for just a few: song leader, object lesson, game coordinator, admin, offering attendance, birthday cards, and then also implement short term. Don't put somebody in there and say, you're the Sunday school teacher, and then just leave them. Tell them, hey, what we do, we run quarterly. All right, this is our team for this quarter. The quarter ends on this date. You have an expiration date. You have an exit point. If you want out, you can get out. I've taught Sunday school by myself for 2 years on a big scale. And it's tough, it's hard. But Sunday school's hard work. To see growth, it's hard work. So we give expiration dates. We have points where it's like, hey, you might get burnout. There might be changes in schedules. There might be burdens that change. There might be callings that change. We've got to be flexible with this, especially in a smaller church setting. The other thing is nobody specializes in small church because there's too much to do. Even small churches have too much to do. You have to run like you're running 1,000. Because if you don't, when those 1,000 show up, or maybe they never will, because you're not acting right. The thing I want to finish up with today is if you're not pushing towards that next major goal, you're never ever going to see that goal because you're not already implementing those strategies to get there. So when it shows up, you're going to be chaotic, you're going to be struggling, you're going to be burning because you've already burnt the candle at both ends. I'm out of time. The next person that's going to do Brother McCarthy, he is our bus ministry. Now I want you to listen to him because this man he's not a veteran in Sunday school, not a veteran in bus ministry. He started 1 year ago. 1 year ago. And he is our sound man and our best minister. So greet Brother McCarthy. Come on, brother.
Thank you again. My name is Travis McCarthy. I do go to church with Jonathan Pierce at Brother Walker's Church in Kaipa. And 1 year ago at this conference is where the burden all started. It birthed out of just becoming stale. You're just running the sound, you're on the board, you're doing a lot of things in the church, but you're really not doing something. You're not getting involved. You're not getting engaged. But he invited me to come down to the conference because my wife's involved in Sunday school. So I said, yeah, I'll make it on my schedule. I worked that day. I had no work that day, and so I stopped by. And from that point, God has done a great thing in my life. From that, it didn't start out with getting a bus the next day. It didn't start out with, we had 100 kids the next Sunday. I can't promise you that at all. It started out with times of prayer, times of consecration. And I like to ride motorcycles, and my pastor likes to ride motorcycles, and we would ride a lot. We'd ride and ride and ride. And one day we ended up in Santa Monica. We rode down to the beach and everything, and the day got late. We got a cup of coffee, and an hour turned into 2 hours, turned into 3 hours. It got cold that night. We ended up going to a TJ Maxx up in Santa Monica, and we sat in that parking lot. And we wept our eyes out, talking about bus ministry, talking about things that God was coming in. And from that moment, that would have been May, June. From that moment, I went searching for a bus. I went searching for a route. We have several areas in our communities, low-income areas in our community up in Ukaipa. And I go through those communities and pray and knock doors. And we started a bus ministry years prior, the past 2 years of having the Sunday school. We had a bus, not a bus, but we would use our personal vehicles to pick up several families. And I'm not at all opposed to that. We did it for a couple years. I wanted to see it to get a boost. And so I went to several men, several people in our church, and I asked for help. I said, this is my burden. We don't have the funds as a church. Like Brother Jonathan said, we're a smaller church. We don't have all the money in the world to go out and buy a 55-passenger bus right now. But I went to Craigslist. I went to eBay. I mean, any avenue I could find a good deal on something. I don't care if it's white smoke out the back and rust down the side. It's a means to get them to the church. Kind of like what Pastor Spell was saying, it's a vessel to get them to the mother, to get them to church where they can be fed, where they can be saved. So with that year, or with that van, we ended up losing a bid on eBay, and it was tough. I lost it by like $250. It was like someone just took the legs out from underneath it. It was like $250 on the bus, and I missed it. It was a nice van, and I ended up looking a couple days later. I saw the same van on Craigslist, and I was like, "That's the same van. I know it exactly." And the funny thing is, we changed our name of our church years prior to Second Chance, and I said, "I have to have that van." Because I missed it that first time, I'm going to get it the second time. And it was everything. And I paid $500 more for that van. We forked it out of our own money. And God's done a great work in the past year. With that, back to the whole deal with designated vehicles. I believe that there has to be some type of designated vehicle. And that's due to the fact of not just a van or a bus. It can be your personal vehicle. But we're taking kids from their parents a lot of times. And so letting them see the same vehicle week in and week out. I'm a parent myself. I want to see the same people. I want to associate this is what the church is bringing to my kids every single week. And whether it's safe or whether it's, it's going to be compatible for my kids to go in that vehicle. I feel that's not just a van or a bus, but if it's the same vehicle every single time. It not only does that, but it helps build your street cred. Street credit is so important. When you're going into low, I wasn't raised in low income. I was raised back east. I had, you know, I didn't hurt for food. We were in middle class. So I can't associate with them at all. But the street credit is so important. When you go into low income housing, when you go into areas that aren't as financially well-to-do, your street credit is important. They look at you for what you are right there. It's who you are is what you are. It also helps with consistency. Consistency is probably the #1 rule in my book, is being consistent. Every single week, the same face, at the same door, picking up the same kid. And I can't stress consistency enough. Like I said, I've only been doing it a year, less than a year, but the same kids that come on our bus, I asked my brother-in-law last night what our return ratio is. And we're at an 83% return ratio of kids that come back week in and week out. Over the past year, we've had 244 kids in less than a year come into the bus, come into Sunday school. With that consistency, now those kids, some of them that we just started picking up 2 months ago, now last Sunday, their parents were in church. Their parents were in the altar. Their parents were seeking the Holy Ghost. And it's built off of the consistency. And then we had one of our bus kids that rode back with us to drop some of the kids off, and they come in. When the one Jonathan was talking about wanting to constantly be in church, they keep asking us, we want to be in church, we want to be in regular adult service. He sat there on the bus, and my wife drives one of the bus as a substitute for a regular bus driver. And he said this, and we were actually taking a second trip back to pick up adults from the same community. And he said, this is the way a bus ministry should be, right here. And it made me so happy down inside, knowing that these kids are seeing it, the consistency that we put in. They're only gonna get out of it what we put into it. And he said last night, it's hard work. It is hard work, but it pays off. It pays off in dividends. It pays off in your spiritual life. It pays off in so many other areas that you cannot imagine. And don't get overwhelmed with the whole positions of there's a captain and a bus driver, and I don't know if I should say this, but you know, I drove the bus for 6 months when I first started. I don't have a license. We went on the grace of God. Just believe me. Insurance. We have car insurance on ourselves. Now we have bus insurance. I didn't stress it so much at the beginning, just because you know we were trying to line everything up. I didn't stress over the things like that I probably should have been. I stress about it now, but I thank God that He gave us a time of grace to get everything sorted out. Those kind of things do happen. The fact that you may not have a CDL certified driver, you may not have a Class A driver. We have a brother in our church that's been coming for several years. He used to drive for UPS. And so we approached him, and he's our bus driver almost every single week. My wife fills in when he's not there. My wife rides the bus even when he is driving. She takes over as a captain or as a. But don't get overwhelmed with the whole position deal. I did for a little while, and we don't have enough people to facilitate those positions yet. Those positions will grow themselves. People will flourish in those positions. It's only going to happen when it grows so much. You need more people. We run 5-6 adults right now in Sunday school to run this whole thing. And once this thing grows anymore, we need more help. It's just what happens. You know, it's part of growth. It's growing things. So I don't get carried away with positions. And then being creative. We try to do outreach at least once a week. It's very tough when you're running 4 or 5 people only as in your Sunday school. But being creative. The past couple weeks we reached out.
Shorten it a little bit, but I always find time to pray. no matter what, because there's that time to prayer. Those kids, whether you believe in this or not, are looking forward to that time, because it's that time that they get to be like the adults, the church kids that is. They're praying with the visitor kids. And so keeping that environment is just learning how to be flexible and adjust your teaching schedule and get to that altar call. You know, I know it's tough, especially with small churches, because our pastor uses the terminology, we're an aircraft carrier. You know, one time we're launching airplanes, the next time we're having a banquet, you know, or teaching Sunday school. You know, it's a multi-purpose use type deal. But really giving that altar call, finding someplace to get that altar call, it takes a lot of skill and a lot of effort to really learn how to be flexible, but it'll work. It really does. I encourage you to find that place where you can pray. Even though it's tough. Some of them are soaking wet from sweat, some of them are soaking wet from rain. You know, it's hard.
That you bought the
Or we bought misters that broke. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a challenge. You know, smaller churches have a challenge to get that going. But once you find that place where you learn to be so flexible that nothing phases you anymore, you'll find more time to get kids in the altars, in wherever it's at. You know, I'll create the altar if it's in the fellowship hall, the sanctuary, outside. We'll find that time to bond together and pray. And they look forward to it. To answer your question. Anybody else?
How do you get people involved? Because our biggest struggle is our entire Sunday school ministry is my brother.
Yeah.
And we're heavily involved in everything else. I mean, he's our lead drummer. I'm a worship leader. I run sound. I'm the only person in our church that picks people up. So we're trying to juggle all of this. And we have plans to adapt and grow. It's just getting other bodies in there to fill those spots.
So what I look for is people, I talk to people, hey, we're looking at expanding our Sunday school, not necessarily for a teacher, but we're looking for someone to run with our bus captain, or we're looking for somebody to help me out when I'm teaching, just assist me. You don't have to do anything crazy. I'll do the crazy, you help me out. What happens is when you get these people in an environment, I had 2 people just sit in my Sunday school class. Hey, I just want you to sit in my class. And that's what it is. It's actually contagious. They see how much fun you get to have as an adult. You get to be a kid for an hour, 2 hours. And what happens is they may not have, this is the thing, we think that teachers have to be called preachers, or they have to be called ministers. Everybody's a minister. My greatest Sunday school teacher was a 50, 60-year-old woman that all she did was pray and teach Sunday school. She was the reason I got the Holy Ghost. She wasn't a preacher. She didn't get behind a pulpit. Her daughter became the assistant superintendent because her mother was just that person. She taught Sunday school. She didn't do crazy object lessons, but she taught the lesson. She wasn't multifaceted. So what I would talk to you is say, anybody can be a Sunday school teacher. Not anybody can teach, but everybody can be involved in Sunday school. And I wish my whole church was involved in Sunday school, because that just goes back to big vision. But find people that are talented in certain areas, give them a job. If their job is greeting people, they're happy face, smiling all the time. Hey, can you greet all my kids when they come in? You know, can you take attendance when they come in? That relieves you of those responsibilities. We did this, we're on this new system on our phone, and I've handed it off 3 weeks now. Some of the attendance and take up offering and do it, because that's time I get to spend getting ready for the lesson, make sure I'm prepared.
I think another thing, a big thing that's helped in the past 6 months is we, with Brother Jonathan and Brother Walker, they set up a dedicated evening. We took an actual Wednesday night and made it geared totally around Sunday school, and actually had a Sunday school lesson in front of the entire church. And we literally got the entire church up, singing Shackles and doing the dance. And I mean, the entire church was doing it, laughing and having a great time, but it brought them into Sunday school. Oh, I'm sorry. So what I was saying is we actually had a dedicated Wednesday night geared totally around Sunday school. And they had, Brother Jonathan had octave lessons up there. He taught a Sunday school lesson. We had the entire church up singing and dancing. I don't know if you ever saw Brother Tyler Hodge do shackles and do the dance. We had everybody in the church up dancing like they were in Sunday school. And so it brought them from, instead of coming to regular service, it actually brought them into our Sunday school that we see every single Sunday. And got them involved, and it made them feel like they had a place that they could actually sign up to be involved somewhere. Because they may feel uncomfortable walking into your Sunday school saying, I want to listen to see what you say. We actually brought it to them because they're going to be there on Wednesday night anyway. So we actually made a whole Sunday out of that. I got up and gave a little spiel on bus ministry and talked about bus ministry. So it's things like that in coordination with your pastor definitely helps out to bring attention to the entire church for help, not just on an individual basis. So things like that definitely help with us.